Hey, this is Speelburg. I'm hanging out with Rob, and we're on Front Row Live.
Congratulations with your debut album, Porsche. I love the sounds, I love the sonics, I love the lyrics on this record. I know this record took you quite some time to kind of write it and create it, but tell me about like those challenges that you kind of face to make this record release happen.
Well, first up, thanks for having me. It's real cool to be on the other side of the album release and still talking stuff. I mean, it came out on Friday, but it's still fun to just get the word out there, you know? It took a minute. I mean, it took me about like 2.5 years to write it, to write and produce. I think I wanted to get it. I wanted to get perfect. It's a debut album, and there's not that much pressure to make an album really these days. Like, people are happy if you just do EPs or singles because of how Spotify and Apple Music work with playlisting. But still nice to do an album. And there's like a couple tracks that I had released before that made it onto the record. But yeah, it was just about writing like a lot. And kind of figuring out the thing that I wanted to do. And there was like a couple tracks that were milestones. I think Gwyneth was a good milestone, and being like, oh, well, that covers this kind of sound that I wanted to make for, if you're thinking of the album as like, because there's so many different sounds on it. If you think of the album as like, oh, that's that pocket of the thing I wanted to make, and this one's this pocket, and like Crash and Burn's another one where I was like, oh, that definitely wanted to explore that kind of avenue. So it's just about getting all the things I love together under one roof.
How difficult or how easy was that for you to be able to try different techniques, different sounds, different styles, and still be able to make it sound like one body of work?
I think at the beginning a little bit tough in terms of like getting my head around like, oh, there's all these ideas and I want them all to be on the record, but like, yeah, so you also don't want to be making an incohesive record. You want it to sound like one thing. I think a lot of it came together when it came to mixing. I got this guy called Ben Allen, who's an amazing mix engineer. He did the whole record with his assistant, also called Ben. And we did it over Skype, and I think there's some things when you're making a record like it that I think I've learned this like having made it now. I kind of know for the next one, like if you can have a consistent drum sound or drum style production, that'll make the album sound like one. There's not necessarily that on Porsche, but vocal wise, we managed to mix them all so that they like, there's a similar vocal sound. So you hear one track going into the next and you're like, oh, okay, this all makes sense together. I think adding sounds that blend the songs together in between, just like in a subtle way, also makes it sound more like you're listening to like a mixtape or something. Yeah, I think all those little tricks that, you know, you're making a record for 2.5 years, you're going to get better at production. You're going to get better at songwriting. Yeah, just learned new tricks and applied them as and when I went along.
And as far as like being the artist as well as the producer, like how challenging was that for you to do? Because like you just kind of mentioned, like you're learning new tricks as you're going. So, you know, you might have finished a song 3 weeks ago, but then you learn something else that you want to add to it. And I'm sure there was some songs where you kind of like reimagined them before we actually got to listen to what we hear today. Sure. But how difficult was that process for you to be like the artist and the producer?
I mean, it's kind of the thing that I know, like the artist producer relationship, I think is very different for me. And I think it's different these days than it was like in the 70s or in the 80s or in the 90s. The quote unquote job of producer has changed. And I think if you're writing music, and in my case, you know, it's like production, and it's even going up to mixing to a certain point, because you're like making your sounds sound a specific way. Obviously, when you bring it to a mix engineer, it's always fun to have them redo the thing that you did, but because they're much better at that job, they're going to do it in a way where like suddenly everything just comes together. I think I really wouldn't have it any other way. I really love production, and I love songwriting, and I love doing both at the same time. For me, when I write a song, sometimes it'll start just on a guitar and a vocal, or sometimes it'll start with an instrumental that I'm working on that I then add vocals to later. So you're kind of always just thinking about the production and the songwriting in tandem.
And as far as the sounds go, like how creative did you get with kind of making these sounds happen for each and every song?
Pretty creative. Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun with a lot of different synths, and you know, whenever I was writing with my buddy Laurie, we'd be either at my studio or at his. We have different synths that we use, so you're just using each other's toys. On a song like Crash and Burn, that was more like I chopped up a sample, and then kind of built the song around there. So there's all these different approaches, but yeah, we made, like, you know, over the course of the 2.5 years, I got to make a lot of different sounds. The sound at the beginning, Gwyneth, I really like that one. That's like a bunch of different things mixed together. The flute sound I love. There's like a shimmery sound in there, which I really love. It's just about experimentation, running shit through pedals, running shit through as many different plugins as you can think of. Like, there's no one way. Like, there's a lot of people that are just like, oh, everything has to be analog, or everything has to be. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I also don't think those people really mean it. But yeah, like, just plugging stuff into stuff, and plugging stuff that shouldn't be plugged into those stuff, and sometimes they'll make weird noises, and you're like, record, and then you have a record.
Was there a particular sound or that was kind of interesting to create with like kind of doing things that you weren't supposed to do, but it just like the sound that it gave out was kind of cool that you wanted to kind of use it for a song?
Yeah, on Entertaining the Notions, there's like a weird synth solo kind of thing, or a section with a woo, like just a gnarled out synth sound, and that was on the bass station. No, it was on the bass station plugin. So bass station also has like a plugin version, and mine was broken. I hadn't upgraded it yet. I hadn't like updated, so it had this thing where it would reset, but it would reset at like a semitone lower or higher or something. So I'd written this synth part, and then I closed the session and then reopened it, and it was in a different key and also a slightly different sound. And I was like, duh. But it sounded really cool. And I know that saying it was like a semitone out, normally you'd be like, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. But it worked, and it made it so weird. And I think a couple notes were, I liked it so much, just printed it right there to audio, and then kind of maybe tuned a few notes later just so it would work with the key of the song. But yeah, there was the keys sound on Can't Get Even, where we mixed like a live piano with a kind of like brassy Moog sound. Those two together, that was really fun. I mean, I could talk to you at length about every sound on every song.
I feel like, you know, you were excited to write these lyrics, but I think you were more excited to create these sounds, because I feel like it was just like testing the waters and trying new things and just kind of exploring and you know, breaking sounds down to kind of create new ones. And that's the kind of feel that I get when I'm listening to this record.
Nice. Great. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I think some people react to the record. They've reacted to it differently. Some people have been like, love the production and very much like what you're saying, like, oh, this sound is really cool, and you know, like kind of honing in on different production aspects. And then other people, like my partner, for example, she very much like is a lyric first kind of person. And so some people will be like, oh, this lyric, what did that mean? And what did this mean? And kind of like, well, I don't want to tell you too much because then it'll take away from the fun and the poetry of it. Like, obviously, I know what they're about, but someone comes up to you and they're like, oh, this thing must be about this. And you're like, oh, I mean, no, but fun that you read it that way. So different people are looking at the production and different people are looking at the lyrics. Hopefully together, those people can all have a fun opinion about the record.
Right, and understand what's really going on.
Yeah, they can talk to each other and figure it out.
As far as meanings go, what's the meaning with Gwyneth and the idea of getting her attention?
I think for me, Gwyneth Paltrow as a human being, as an icon, I find fascinating. I think, so I was describing it to someone the other day as like, it's like a mixture between the Queen of England and like Marilyn Monroe. Like, so recognizable. So, but like, has this like on top of the mountain goddess kind of status, but at the same time is very aware of how funny it all is, or from what I can tell from the many interviews I've listened to. Not in a like creepy stalkery way, but like if you're gonna write a song, be informed. I just find her fascinating, and more in a like the Warhol, Marilyn Monroe, or Jackie Kennedy, or Elizabeth Taylor kind of, or the Elvises. Like there's just this, the love of like what the icon represents and the multifaceted person that they are. Because, you know, it's funny to sell really expensive jade yoni eggs and a candle that's called "This Candle Smells Like My Vagina." Like it's undoubtedly funny, and like it's not just a capitalistic ploy. And I don't know, she's super charming. And hopefully the song kind of explores, you know, every side of the dice, the die. Sorry, I could talk about Gwyneth for hours.
I know. Which one would you talk about the most, Gwyneth or creating these sounds?
Man, how long do we have?
So now that this record is finally out, like I'm sure, you know, so much weight has been lifted from you, but I also feel like you're also already working on your next projects. But like now that this record is out, this is such a weird time because, you know, artists are used to releasing and touring and promoting it with live shows. Yeah. So, you know, what are your plans for the promotions of this record as far as like doing any performances go?
Yeah, well, we've got some performances lined up. There's some like live stream stuff. I'm doing a thing on Reddit on Wednesday. And then we've got a bunch of full band stuff in the works. I think we're doing one at the end of the month, which will be the first time I've played with my full band in like basically nearly a year, which is kind of gnarly to think about. But yeah, so doing some live streams, like several cameras, like well mixed, hopefully, all going out. I really, fingers crossed, hope that it's something that works well and we can do a lot of. But yeah, just promoting the record any way that we can. You know, any pocket of the internet that'll have me either talk about it or perform. I mean, I really, really miss performing. It's the thing that I love the most, and just, you know, ruined all that for everyone. And I don't know that touring's gonna come back for at least another 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like 2 years. So I've already written the second record that'll come out next year. So I've started working on the third record. I mean, so much of this year's been busy directing the videos and getting the record ready. Just because I really like directing. I really like editing. So I've been just like flexing that muscle for a few months leading up to the release of the album. And yeah, now I'm just gonna sit down, start writing album 3.